Districts didn't end as I had hoped. In an attempt to set the meet record, I had blasted from the starting line like an amateur trying to win the 3.1-mile race in the first half mile. I went from running tall, upright, and in the lead to dancing the skeleton dance on my way to a dismal 7th place out of 126 runners. Although the team had qualified for state, we finished in 2nd place, 29 points behind Tipton. Unhappy both with my performance and that of our team, I fell into a snit. Afterwards, Coach Brown told the boys' team to cool down 2 miles to shake the soreness from our legs while he picked up the results packet. The varsity 7 jogged to the far edge of Tipton's Town Park, which had served as the course. A ball field was to our left, a drainage ditch and 1-lane road to our right. Across the road was a harvested cornfield. A barbed wire fence marked its boundary. With most of the trees starkly rising from the carpet of wrinkled red, orange, and yellow leaves they had shed, there was little refuge to be had from the late afternoon sun. After receiving our manila envelope of clinking silver medals at the awards ceremony, I led my 6 teammates. Minutes into our cool-down, my emotions still pulsing, I impulsively whipped around to face them, thrust the burdensome envelope in their face, and brought everyone to a sudden halt. My hands thrashed wildly as the words spilled from my lips, triggered by the thoughts that swept through my competitively fired-up mind. Speaking from the heart, I began, "Guys, these silver medals are a challenge, one that asks, no begs, us not to settle for them. They taunt us by what they stand for. They mark us as losers. I see them as an additional motivation. We need to think for ourselves, dare to have our own opinions, not let our minds be influenced by society deemed successful. If we have more fight in us, if we want it more, if these medals can motivate us to win state, something must be done. 2nd place is not a success." I scanned our surroundings and spontaneously started toward the cornfield. I poured the medals into my hands, took 2 swift steps, wound up, and chucked them high into the air. They flew across the road, cleared the barbed wire fence, and landed with a clunk on the field's callous dirt. I had thrown away the source of our disappointment, our embarrassment. Vindication. I turned back to my teammates expecting to be met with expressions of awe and admiration. What greeted me was silence. 2 of our teammates abandoned our cool-down and made a beeline to the cornfield. I ignored them and continued running ahead. Unsure of what to do, my other 4 teammates hesitantly fell in line behind me. I felt the 2 who had left us were content with what I regarded as a defeat. I would not stop to indulge that attitude. As they scavenged for their silver treasures among the falling stalks, I led the rest of the guys back to the empty bus, the only bus left in the lot. We arrived to find the rest of the team sprawled on the cool, shaded grass next to the Regina bus, using gym bags as pillows, waiting to go home. The post-race snacks of Jell-O eggs and bagels had been consumed and fatigue had set in. As I picked through the remnants of the tree, I heard the whispers circulating about our 2 remaining teammates who weren't back yet. Those who hadn't actually seen me throw the medals couldn't accept the truth at first. I heard explanations of incredulity above the chatter. Matt did what? Someone said? No way. 3 people soon emerged from between a pair of thick oaks in the distance, and a single glance told everyone that the rumors were indeed true. My 2 teammates carried their dusty medals tightly gripped in their fist. Their eyes were swollen, their red faces burned. Coach Brown trailed 1 step behind, a hand on each boy's shoulder. A sacred silence had descended on the team, much like the kind that fills a split second between a race starter's announcement, "On your marks," and the firing of the gun. While the 2 boys watched with their heads bowed, Coach Brown stared unblinkingly at one person, me. I knew it was only a matter of mere seconds before the command came, "Matt McCue, I need to speak with you." I shot up as Coach looked to either side, trying to find a suitable spot where he could conduct his conversation with me undisturbed. We were in the middle of the empty parking lot. The bus offered the only cover. "Come with me," he said, firmly gripping my bicep, displaying the strength he normally reserved for hugs. When we were loaded on the other side of the vehicle, he let me hear it. "Who are you to define their success?" he said. "To say their best isn't good enough." He looked me in the eye, and I grunted, "I'm sorry," every time he paused for breath during his 5-minute tongue lashing. He finished, "Fast or slow, first, second, or last, I don't care. You're a Regina runner. We do things the right way no matter what." I nodded, but my thoughts were elsewhere. All I could think about was winning the state championship 10 days later. Coach Brown finished with, "We both know you're better than this." "I know," I said, apologizing to him and to my teammates, but inside nothing had changed. That night I drove home on the country roads veiled by the darkness in which I often ran. The 8-mile ride gave me plenty of time for reflection. I realized that despite all that had happened, I felt not 1 ounce of remorse. And that's kind of how it was. Coach Brown and I, for better or for worse, we certainly respected and appreciated each other. We just had different mindsets about what was right and what was wrong, and I thought my way was the right way. And so I spent some time under him, and the more and more I ran with him, the more and more this fueled my desire. Get out of Iowa. You need to do something else. You need to go someplace else. You need to try something new under a new person. One point I want to make here is Coach Brown's sticking point was, first, second, or last. I don't care. You're a Regina runner. We do things the right way. And he treated his athletes, one of his hallmarks is that he treated the slowest runners on his team, and he valued them as much as he did the fastest, which was something was not the case when I went out to run for Colorado for Coach Wetmore. And Coach Wetmore openly told us that he said, I'm going to give most of my time to the fastest guys, and those who aren't, well, it was more or less understood. They're lucky to be here every day, and that was kind of me. So there's this next passage I want to read, second to last passage. It takes us out to Boulder. So now I'm living my dream, and I arrive in Colorado, and I think I know what I'm doing. To preface this, there are a couple of guys in here who I want to introduce, and one of them, they're Jorge and Ed Torres. They were twin brothers from Chicago. They were high school national champions, collegiate national champions. Jorge was an Olympian. And then there was another guy, Dathan Ritzenheim, high school national champion, collegiate national champion, 2-time Olympian. They would eventually become my roommates, but certainly not at first. I arrive, and they're there, and this story kind of just tells you what it was like to show up. Now all of a sudden I go from being the top guy in Iowa, arrive out in Colorado, and what it's like to be the new guy on the first day of practice. It's called Running My Guts Out, July 2001. I arrived in the dry heat of Colorado with a well-thought-out plan. 1 week earlier, I had followed Coach Drake's advice and called Jorge Torres. He told me that the team ran together 3 days a week during the summer, meeting at 7:30 a.m. at Potts, the university's track, and that I was welcome to join them on the very first morning after my arrival. I told Jorge I'd be there. However, after I hung up, I realized I had forgotten to ask him for directions. Instead of calling back and risking sounding like a rookie, I spent the next week checking maps and emailing Boulder running clubs, seeking out anyone who might know the track's location. Finding Potts proved more difficult than a Google search. Apparently, it wasn't an internet search away. The closest I came to an exact location was an area of 2 square miles and numerous side streets deep in the heart of Boulder. With such paltry info in hand, I gunned my aunt's Jeep out of her Netherlands driveway at 6 on a Friday morning and began the 25-minute drive down Boulder Canyon. I didn't want to be late, especially not on my first day. The rising sun cut through the sleepy haze and needle pines as I steered down the canyon's steep and windy turns and pulled into sun-drenched Boulder. The Flatirons rose in the west. The dry land seemed to stretch for miles, uninterrupted but for the cookie-cutter housing developments that spread unceasingly from Denver. I figured I would find the track next to campus, so I headed in that direction. I had 1 hour to search, and the adventure had begun. Surprisingly, though it may have seemed, I didn't nervously wonder if I would be able to keep up with the Buffaloes on my first day. That issue had been settled long ago in my mind. A few times in my life, I had simply decided that I was going to do something. And I had. Today, I planned to physically will myself to stay with the Colorado runners no matter what. I had to show them I belonged. 7:32. The gravel crunched as I sped into Potts' parking lot, silently cursing myself for arriving late. I had finally found Colorado's track, which, as a training staple of a national running powerhouse, looked a little, well, bare. The weather-worn crimson surface could have been mistaken for any track in America. Nothing in particular marked it as a home of champions. Located half a mile from the campus and adjacent to an office park, the track appeared to have been randomly dropped into the urban landscape, far away from Colorado's massive football stadium. Surrounded by a chain-link fence, the track shouldered 2 outbuildings, an equipment shed, and a concrete hut that housed the track's bathrooms and locker rooms of Colorado's ski team. I guess the ruggedness appealed to Coach Wetmore. It showed that being great couldn't always be measured in terms of fancy equipment, but often boiled down to the simple fact of working harder and being smarter than the rest.